This 11-inch gaming handheld is in my top 3 of favorite and best handhelds of all time. So is it the king or not? Stay tuned to the end of this video and I'll let you know. Once again, I'm Cameron and this is Gamer vs. Tech.
Something that was real.
So in my last video, I did a quick unboxing and first impressions of the OneXPlayer X1 8840U edition. My initial impressions were it was big and heavy, but overall it was checking all the marks of the best, biggest handheld I could find. I've been chasing that handheld dragon. In my first video, I talked about how you should buy a device from OneXPlayer. You can buy direct, however, I recommend buying from Amazon or another third-party seller. It's a little bit easier to do that way, and just in case anything happens, you can easily return it. When you buy direct from OneXPlayer, it takes a very long time to get back to China, and you have to pay for the shipping yourself. I also talked about whether or not you should buy the AMD version or the Intel version. The Intel version is a total flop. The MSI Claw, total flop. They do not perform as well as the AMD APUs. I will tell you right now, this runs really well. Seeing it up against the Intel version, it's not even close. The Intel version runs really hot and you don't get as many frames per second. But now that I've had some time testing out this device, I can truly say, it's pretty damn incredible. It's really, truly a great gaming experience, especially using it as a handheld. There's just so much that this device did right. I mean, look at it. It looks really good and it's a handheld. However, that doesn't mean there isn't any issues. Just like all devices, including the Steam Deck, there's issues. The Legion Go, issues. ROG Ally, issues. This does have some issues. However, I think it doesn't outweigh the likes. So why did I buy the X1 and why are you watching this video? You might be like me too. Well, I am chasing the handheld dragon. I want the biggest, I want the best, I want the greatest handheld gaming experience you could possibly imagine, which is why I landed on the X1. The specs are right, the screen is right. It's from a company that I have had other devices from. It just genuinely seems like everything you could want in a handheld device. As far as pricing goes, the X1 comes in 3 different versions. A 32GB 1TB version at $1,089, a 32GB 2TB version at $1,179, and a 64GB 4TB version at $1,499. As far as specs go, it's rocking the Ryzen 7 8840U at 8 cores, 16 threads, with the 780M integrated graphics. It's almost an 11-inch 2.5K screen, running at 120 Hz at a 16:10 aspect ratio. Now this is a portrait display, it is not native landscape. It's rocking Windows 11, a 65 watt-hour battery. It's running LPDDR5 RAM at 7500 megatransfers. A pretty hefty tablet as far as size goes. It's rocking Bluetooth 5.2. It's got dual speakers tuned by Harman. As far as ports go, it's rocking a 3.5mm audio jack, an SD card slot, an Oculink port, 2 USB 4 ports, and a full-size USB-A 3.2 port. So the ROG Ally, the Legion Go, the Steam Deck, they all have software, right? Well, the OneXPlayer rocks OneXConsole. It's easily accessible via the turbo button or other ways, but as far as the overlay goes, it gives you a pretty decent readout of all the things you need. You can change the resolution, you can change the RGB, you can change your TDP, pretty much anything that you need this tablet to do, you can rock from this software right here. Now you can go even further and go into an update center, a game setter. It's all right, it's not that great, it's not the best, it's certainly not the best, but it works. It doesn't work that great, but we'll get into that a little bit further. So let's talk about the likes of the OneXPlayer X1. First, the screen is absolutely amazing. It's almost 11 inches, it's big, it's beautiful, it's bright. It's not HDR, but it looks really good. Playing any game on the OneXPlayer X1 is just a great experience. Because of the bigger screen, you can see more detail, even running a game at 800p. Now, Once again, it's not HDR, so it's not really deep blacks and incredibly vibrant colors, but it's pretty damn good. Another thing I really like about the OneXPlayer is it's super quick and it's snappy. And when using it as a laptop, it's pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie, when you snap that keyboard on, it feels just right. I'm not gonna complain about that at all. Now, I didn't buy this because I wanted a laptop replacement or even like a tiny netbook or anything like that, which OneXPlayer is known to make, but it works really, really good. I'm not gonna lie. It makes me wanna use it more as a little laptop, even though I have a million other devices that do that. But like I said, it's quick, it's snappy, and I can't complain. As far as the keyboard goes, the keyboard is really nice. It's got a really premium feel. The keys aren't super loud, they're very tactile, but they're not overly like clunky. Trackpad, not the greatest because it's, yay big. But as far as feel, it feels very premium. This part doesn't flap around, it doesn't bend, it feels really, really solid. Same thing with the back plate. The back plate also turns into a stand and that feels really, really good. If you saw my first video, I was actually quite shocked by how strong the magnet was that holds it on to the back of the device. It just feels really premium. Now, like the Minis Forum V3, the case did not feel very premium. The stand, I think, was a total design flaw. Now, as far as the OneXPlayer, it feels really, really good. So if you're wondering about it, trust me, it's really nice. The OneXPlayer is super quiet when you're not gaming. Even when you're gaming, it doesn't get that loud. Now, you could do max fans, set up a custom curve, but I just leave it on auto. And it's really, really nice. When I'm just using it for productivity, surfing the web, stuff like that, quiet as a mouse. You can't even hear it. Gaming, yeah, if I put it at 30 watts, I can hear it a little bit. But if my wife's sleeping next to me, she's not gonna wake up. It's totally fine. I was actually quite surprised when I heard the speakers on this device. Tuned by Harman, you definitely can tell. They're not the best speakers out there, and they're not beating the G14 laptop or anything like that, but they sound pretty damn good. Another thing I tend to get surprised about is on these devices, Windows Hello works really, really well. Sometimes when you start up a device with a webcam or Windows Hello, it takes a minute for the camera to turn on and actually recognize you. I can say with confidence that when you turn this device on, that camera is on like that and it picks you up. So kudos to OneXPlayer. Once again, it's super snappy and Windows Hello works so good. So let's talk about gaming experience, because that's why you're here, right? This is Gamer versus Tech. The gaming experience on the X1 is absolutely phenomenal. It's such an amazing experience because the specs are great, the screen is great. I really couldn't find many things to dislike while I was actually gaming. I just kept getting carried away with how much I can do, what I could achieve, what I can pull, especially when putting at 30 watts. It's insane. You can get really good FPS in many AAA titles. Another device from OneXPlayer is the OneXFly. In 2024, this was voted the best gaming handheld for many reasons. It's a 7-inch display, 120 Hz. It can have 32 gigabytes up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. The storage is amazing. Everything about this handheld is really, really good. Now, if you can imagine, if you have this device, imagine it bigger, brighter, and better. That's what the X1 is. It's a really good gaming experience. So if you have the OneXFly, you're really gonna like the X1. As far as battery life goes, the X1 does a pretty damn good job. With the 65 watt hour, you can achieve between 1 hour and several hours of gaming. It depends on the resolution, it depends on the graphics setting, and it depends on the game. Playing Elden Ring, high settings, high resolutions, you're not going to be playing for more than an hour. Lowering the resolution, lowering the game settings, you're going to play for more than an hour, but not several hours. Playing Overwatch 2, however, pretty much at any settings, any TDP, you're going to get several hours because it's an extremely optimized game. Cyberpunk, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more. Once again, it comes down to resolution and settings. So as far as the games I test out Cyberpunk, Elden Ring, and Overwatch. I test out Overwatch because it's an older game, it's extremely optimized, it runs great on pretty much any system. So when you test a game like Overwatch, it really boils down to how many FPS you can squeeze out of this device. I like to test out Elden Ring because 1, it's relevant, Shadow of the Erd Tree just came out, which is amazing, and 2, it's an open world, graphically intensive game. Some desktop setups have a hard time running it. So being able to run it on a handheld is absolutely amazing. And a handheld like this, I really want to see what I can squeeze out of it. How many FPS can I get? Can I get a solid 60 at 80, 1200p, even at the 2.5K? Like, can I get 60 FPS? So that's why I like to choose Elden Ring. Cyberpunk, as we know it, is one of those graphically intensive games. It has FSR. You can play around with the settings a little bit. When it first came out, a lot of people had a hard time running it at 60 FPS. Running it on a handheld, once again, absolutely amazing. So I like to test Cyberpunk because it's open world, graphically intensive. You can tweak it in so many different ways. You can put FSR on, and really, it's a really good way to see what these handhelds can achieve. So first up, it's Overwatch. It runs amazing at 15, 20, and 30 watts. Now I think the sweet spot is 20 watts. The reason why I say that is because your FPS could range anywhere between 90 and 120 FPS depending on the map or who you're using and what's going on. But Overwatch on a handheld with this screen size and this form factor is absolutely amazing. I had so much fun playing Overwatch that I played for many days, several hours, and I stopped touching my desktop at one point in time. Something about playing Overwatch in bed and getting all the kills and all that stuff, it's absolutely amazing. It runs really, really well on this machine. And like I said before, the sweet spot is about 20 watts. Now, there's not a huge jump in performance between 20 watts and 30 watts. That's kind of across the board when you're playing with one resolution. Now, obviously changing the resolution and upping the wattage will definitely help, but if you're using it at, let's say, 1200p, the jump between 20 watts and 30 watts is very small, so that's why I say 20 watts is really good if you want a game for more than 2 hours. So if you're trying to play Overwatch, Overwatch 2 at 1200p, medium settings at 20 watts is the sweet spot. You're gonna game for several hours and you're really going to enjoy it. Elden Ring is truly an amazing experience on the X1. Now, you're not going to want to play above 1200p. 800p is really good. Obviously, the detail isn't just quite there, and you feel kind of bad not, exploiting this 2.5K screen, but you're not going to bump it up to max resolution. Anyways, 800p definitely lets you squeeze out more battery life, especially at low settings. Now, if you bump it up at 1200p low settings, I definitely recommend the 20 to 30 watt range. You will get 60 FPS. You'll be anywhere between 45 and 60 FPS if you're running the 20 watts. But if you're at 30 watts, you're getting 60 FPS solid. It's going to be solid all day. Yeah, you might jump down to 55 or something like that. But no matter where you are on the map, this game runs really, really good on the X1. I definitely played for several hours. I don't really like playing with my handhelds plugged in, but when you get so enthralled in the game, you definitely end up plugging it in because you're trying to squeeze out more time. But I mean, Elden Ring on this 11-inch screen in handheld mode is so nice. So Cyberpunk, it runs really well. You're definitely gonna get over 60 FPS with FSR on any resolution. It runs really, really good. It looks really, really good. Now, max resolution, you're gonna get really bad performance. Max resolution at 30 watts, you're gonna get anywhere between like 20 and 30 FPS. Now, lowering that resolution to 1200p, you're gonna bump it up a little bit. You're gonna get maybe between 50 and 60, depending on where you are. Cities, crowds, stuff like that, you're definitely not gonna hit 60. But lowering it to 800p, about a mix between low and maybe medium graphic settings at 20 and 30 watts, you're gonna get 60 and above. I was hitting like 90 in some cases when I was running 20 watts and even 30 watts. But I will say there was a weird issue when I was playing Cyberpunk. Now, I would set it at 30 watts, it'd be fine, I'd be hitting 90, maybe even 100 at times. But then for some reason, the TDP would lower back down to 15 watts. And I was able to observe this using MSI Afterburner. Now, all I would have to do is open the OneXConsole Software, the overlay via the turbo button, and then just kind of slide the slider back up to 30, even though it was at 30, and then I would see the wattage jump back up, and then the game would run a little bit better. But after about 3, 4, 5 minutes, it would go back down to 15 watts. I still cannot figure this out. If anyone can help me out on that one, I would be much appreciative. And I can definitely say that Cyberpunk runs really well, but that one issue was kind of weird. So for the most part, I was actually playing at 28 or 20 watts, and the game ran phenomenally. I was definitely above 60 FPS, even in the city, large crowds, stuff like that. So once again, Cyberpunk runs really well on this device. So if I was going to compare this handheld to another handheld, I would probably compare it to the Legion Go, right? The Legion Go has a big screen, has detachable controllers, similar resolution, similar TDPs, but it does have the Z1 Extreme. The Z1 Extreme doesn't perform as well as the 780M or the 7840U or 8840U APUs, but it's pretty much there. It's not entirely there, but it's almost there. What the Legion Go doesn't have going for it is the 16 gigabytes of RAM. I really do think that Lenovo needs to rethink the next gen, because 16 gigabytes of RAM is just not enough. A lot of people said, oh, 16 gigabytes, that's perfect for handhelds because you're not going to be doing intensive gaming on a handheld, stuff like that. BS. That's not true. You definitely want 32 gigabytes of RAM because you want more VRAM. And if you're allocating 8 gigs of VRAM and you only have 8 gigs left, some of these games they're requiring, and you're running MSI and other things in the background, some of these games require 14 gigabytes of RAM in the background. So the 16 is not enough. 32 gigs is definitely the way to go. So as far as the Legion Go compared to the X1 goes, the X1 smokes it. It absolutely smokes it. Where the Legion Go kinda takes the lead in some cases is the software experience. You can definitely count on Lenovo and their updates and just the ease of use, the interface, everything. It's much better than the OneXConsole software, and the support from Lenovo is definitely going to be a little bit better than from One X. But as far as the device and the specs and playing the two handhelds side by side, the X1 just smokes it. I mean, it just absolutely smokes it. It plays every game much better. The screen's bigger. I think the screen's brighter. It shows more detail. So if I were to compare it to another handheld, I definitely would compare it to the Legion Go. Like I said before, the OneXFly is basically the little baby brother of the X1, even though the XFly came out first. But if you can imagine, once again, it's just a bigger, brighter screen. It runs about the same. So what are my dislikes? I do have some, unfortunately. I wanted this to be the best device that ever came out, no fault. But even the ROG Ally, the Legion Go, the Steam Decks, they do have their own problems. My first problem, and this is kind of a given, is the weight. It can be straining, especially when playing it as a handheld. As you can imagine, it's almost 800 grams. I mean, it can be a little heavy, definitely. Holding it out, like, you're not going to be doing this for long periods of time. With your elbows propped up and on a lap desk or something like that, it's totally comfortable. But the weight also does have a lot to do with this distribution when holding the controllers. I tend to hold the screen a little bit more flatter or perpendicular to myself, not horizontal, because especially if you're a claw grip person, the weight distribution is a little off. If I were to hold handheld where I would want to hold the handheld via the controllers, it tends to tip towards the front. And by doing that, you do actually have better access to the analog sticks, but the weight alone, it can be a little straining. Another thing that I dislike about this handheld are, I just feel really uneasy trying to attempt, and I never have, holding this device by one controller. Because of the weight, I am almost certain that if I were to try to hold this up by one side of the controller, it would completely snap off. It's pretty heavy. And there is a little bit of wiggle to these controllers. I feel like it wouldn't take that much effort to break this. Now, I'm not going to, not for the channel, I'm sorry. But it's not terrible, but they're a little insecure. And I wish it was just really, really solid, like the Legion Go. The Legion Go definitely wins there as far as the controllers and how they attach. Whatever they did there, super solid. Great job, Lenovo. But the X1, it's not terrible. You know, be kind, be nice to your device. Don't manhandle it. Don't like be holding it and throwing it around or trying to hold it up on one side. It's gonna break. It's 100% gonna break. Another thing I kind of dislike about the controllers is just the feel. They're really light, which is nice. I mean, I guess it doesn't add to the weight of the device, but they don't feel super premium. Just like the plastic itself, it kind of feels like one of the cheap Joy-Cons that you would get from maybe Amazon or something like that. The buttons are they're not the greatest either. And the D-pad, even though I don't play fighting games, it's like they're micro switches and they're like kind of unnecessarily loud. Very, very clicky. So when my wife's sleeping next to me and I'm trying to play in bed, I'm not worried about the screen brightness or anything like that. I'm actually worried about, I feel like I'm typing on like a really noisy keyboard with these micro switches. Now, there might be a decent reason for why they went with this design, but in my opinion, I'm not a fan. I'm just definitely not a fan of these micro switches. And now lastly, as far as the controller goes, the one thing that kind of kills it for me, it's not the worst thing, but it's something I think about nearly every time, all the time while I'm using this device, is the thumbsticks are extremely light. They're really, really light, like lighter than the ROG Ally if I were to compare it to something. Now, if you're used to a PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, the Legion Go or the Steam Deck, you will definitely notice a pretty big difference. These are extremely light. So when you're playing like a multiplayer game, Overwatch, Modern Warfare 3, or anything like that, you have to learn quickly because they're just so light, and it's way too light. So if I can upgrade these, I certainly will at some point in time if they come out with tighter modules, for sure. But once again, it's not like the part that it's not like, oh, because of that I'm going to return this or anything like that. But for those of you who are wondering, they're definitely light. They're super light, almost so that you kind of want to not use the controllers and just prop this thing up and use your PlayStation controller or your Xbox controller. But out of convenience, you know, the handheld mode's very nice. It's not the worst thing in the world, but they are light. Now, one dislike that may deter you from buying any OneXPlayer device is the user experience, software experience. I have had problems with every One X device that I've ever had. The OneXConsole software is good. It's not terrible, but I find myself always having to do something a little bit more advanced to get the device running how it should. Now, a problem I ran into was the first game I played was Overwatch. I just ran it at full resolution, lowered the graphics setting to medium, was playing for hours, great. But then I went to go use Elden or play Elden Ring, and I wanted to lower the graphics setting, and for some reason, the other available resolutions were not there. I could not take it out of the 2.5K resolution. I couldn't go to 800p, I couldn't go to 1200p, and after a little bit of digging, which I've done this before with the OneXFly, is you have to add a registry file. Now, this is super easy to get. You go on Discord, you go under the right channel or the right Discord, and you find many people talking about this. Pretty much all you got to do is go to the OneXPlayer website, go to the drivers and software, go to the drivers, download that. Within there is an apps folder. Within that apps folder is a specific registry file that all you do is click on, you add it to your registry, you restart your device, and boom, there you go. Now you have all the resolutions that you could want. But it just didn't work out of the box like that. And that's the unfortunate part. For many people, I think that would deter them. I think, if you were to buy a Steam Deck and you had to do something like that, I think a lot of people would not buy it. There would be a lot of complaints about it. That's what I think really holds back OneXPlayer and these devices, is the software experience, I just think it's just not there with Steam Deck, Lenovo, ROG Ally, these major US brands, stuff. I wouldn't say US brands, but these other brands. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the hardest thing to fix either. But some people just don't want to deal with that, and I totally get that. It's not an out-of-the-box experience. But that being said, I did have to tweak this device in order for it to work properly. So full disclosure, it wasn't an out-of-box experience. Another thing I dislike, but is not the end of the world, is these charging cables. This is, if you saw one of my last videos of the V3 Minis forum, the charging cable was 3 feet. This is a 3-foot cable from OneXPlayer for the X1. I think that 3-foot cables are absolute blasphemy and it's trash. I hope whoever out there in the world hears this and will stop doing this. Cables should be at least 6 feet, because if you're playing in bed or if you're playing on the couch, you don't always have an outlet right next to you, like within a 3-foot distance from you. It could be on the other side of your couch. 6 feet minimum. Absolutely 6 feet minimum. If I see another 3-foot cable, I'm gonna lose my freaking mind, okay? So please, 6-foot cables. It's not the worst thing in the world, especially, I mean, I'm not running it plugged in all the time, but if I want to, it's ridiculous, okay? 6-foot cables, thank you. So another dislike is not really a dislike. It's more like a forewarning to people. Now, because of OneXPlayer's software, the OneXConsole, the way it adjusts TDP, the various things that are going on in there, sometimes the device, especially like Microsoft Defender, it will flag the files as malware. I have not had this happen on this device. Now, I have had this happen on other OneXPlayer devices. I didn't have it happen on the X1, and I didn't have it happen on the OneXFly. But if you look on Discord, if you look on Reddit, there are several people that have said that their antivirus has flagged some of these files and software as malware. I can't confirm anything. I can't tell you if it is or anything like that. For the most part, from what I hear, it's just a false flag. But I can't tell you if it is or isn't. I'm not that techie, but just don't be alarmed. Go through the proper channels. If you really feel like it, you can do a clean install. But just be forewarned, it might pop up. But once again, I have not had it happen on this device or the last device that I've had from OneXPlayer. Now, I know that seems like a lot of negatives, but I will tell you, the negatives in this case do not outweigh the good. This device is absolutely amazing. The X1 is truly one of the best gaming experiences, handheld wise, I have ever had. So where is it at in my top 3 chart? As far as my top 3 gaming handhelds of all time, in the number 3 spot, I would have to say the Legion Go. It would have been the OneXFly. The OneXFly is absolutely amazing, but the 7-inch screen is a little too small for me. I don't have bad eyes or anything, but bigger in my world is much better. But the Legion Go pretty much nailed it, aside from the 16 gigabytes of RAM. I really think it could do better with more RAM. Now, between the 1 and 2 spot, who takes number 1? The X1 takes number 1. This is, in my opinion, the best handheld you can buy right now. It beats the Steam Deck OLED. Now, that being said, Steam Deck OLED is my number 2, but it is so freaking close. The Steam Deck OLED is absolutely beautiful. It has an extremely great battery life. It runs games really well for its specs, even though all of these devices totally outspec the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck just has something going for it, and it just runs many games really well. Like Elden Ring 800p, it runs it really, really good, and it makes me mad sometimes because I have problems with other devices that have way better specs. But the X1 is the king of handhelds. It is. Now, the controllers kind of piss me off sometimes. The weight kind of pisses me off sometimes. But you're kind of like grinning while playing it. That's the best way I describe it, is you're just like, that's kind of shitty, but it also is pretty damn awesome at the same time. It just truly an amazing experience. If you were to ask me which handhelds should I buy, I would have two and only two in my lineup. Now I have every single handheld you can possibly imagine, but if someone were to ask me what handhelds should you buy, I would say the Steam Deck for it running really good out of the box. Great battery life, take that on a plane, don't worry about it. But if you want the absolute best gaming experience in handheld mode, on the couch, on a plane, sitting in your car, wherever, it's the X1, hands down. It's the best device I have ever used, ever. And that makes me mad too, because I just got the Minis Forum V3 for review, and that was pretty damn awesome. I mean, comparatively, once again, I like big screens, but the V3 doesn't have the controllers on the side. Now I can turn it into a handheld, but natively it doesn't have the controllers on the side. But that as a lap, on my lap using a PlayStation 5 controller runs really good. But the X1 just takes it as far as handheld king, totally. So should you buy the OneXPlayer X1 8840U edition? Absolutely yes. Now, do not get this confused with the X1 Intel version. Do not buy that version. Don't do it. Buy the 8840U version. It runs really well. One thing I didn't talk about yet was the thermals. Don't worry about it. The fan runs really well. The thermals, it gets a little hot, but all these devices get a little hot, but not incredibly hot, and it doesn't worry me one bit. I'm not even going to talk about thermals because everything ran really, really well and so smooth that this thing could be boiling. I don't even care. It works that well. So whether you're a casual gamer or a serious one, I definitely think the X1 is the best handheld gaming PC money could buy right now. It's not that expensive and it just performs really, really well. I hope you guys really like this video. Please like and subscribe. Comment. I love the comments. The comments are really awesome. I really like what some of you guys are saying. Please, if you guys have any advice or questions about things, I'd love to answer them. I'd love to get back to you. Please, please, please support the channel. I want to keep making these videos. I really do enjoy it, and I'm trying to do as much content as possible so you guys can make informed decisions before buying some of these products. Once again, I'm Cameron, and this is Gamer vs. Tech.